Kaylee dog. We gonna do Sin and Punishment on the Nintendo 64? Whoa, God, there it goes. Go get it. Go get it. Go get it. Anyway.
Make me the bait, and Radon will come to feast. Radon is jealous of me. I took you for myself.
I have chosen you.
Well, we're back, you little nasties, and it's like the Stray review all over again. I'm a little smashed recording this, but it'll be fine. I'm sure it'll be fine. I'm walking that fine line where I can still read and talk, so let's do it as fast as we can before it nosedives. It's time to give the N64 some more love. Since I've gotten it and modded it, I've only reviewed one game on this console, which was Pokemon Puzzle League, and that game rips. So if you haven't watched my video on that, go watch it after this one. I'll link to it below. If you happened to watch my N64 mod video, where I detail all the shit I went through to get it up to my unusually high standards, and if not, I'll link to that video below as well. But if you have, you'll understand it when I say that I haven't really taken advantage of what this console has to offer quite yet, so it's time to dive back into it. I've got fond memories of playing the absolute hell out of the N64 when I was a teenager, and yeah, I just completely revealed my age there. I'm old as hell, I'm 40, and I feel like I'm 80, but I always get excited when I get to play it again. There's always a weird sense of nostalgia when I boot up a game on this console, from the horrible jagged polygons, to the fog masking the horrible draw distance, to even holding the strange controller that is still oddly one of my favorites of all time, and I'm sure younger generations won't get this, but for those that are watching that are later Generation X or Millennials, there's nothing that even comes close to that feeling we first had when we got our hands on an N64 and played through Mario 64 for the first time.
Woo! Woo-hoo! Yahoo! Woo! Wah! Woo-hoo! Yahoo! Woo! Woo-hoo!
That part of gaming history has now come and gone, but it will live on in my memory as one of the greatest gaming moments of all time. I'm sorry for those that missed it, but hey, at the very least, you still got your youth out of the deal, so you win this battle. I don't know what I'm saying here. Whatever, moving on. Let's stop sucking this console off and get into the game we're going to be reviewing today. We're going to be looking at an unusual game from Treasure and Nintendo, which, come to think of it, the term unusual and Treasure typically go hand in hand. However, it is strange to see Nintendo's name attached to this one, since this isn't typically the kind of game that they would develop. But if you've watched my review of Dynamite Headdy and Alien Soldier, you'll know that this is exactly the kind of game Treasure would develop, and you know my feelings on them overall. But this is one that is highly regarded amongst those that have actually played it, so let's see if it lives up to the hype. And I'll briefly say that even though I don't exactly love the games Treasure puts out as others do, simply because they make them unnecessarily difficult to play, I will say that I have the utmost respect for trying to do things a little different. Treasure's development team was very creative, I gotta give them that. Yeah, son, welcome back to the channel. I'm your boy, the Nasty B. We're gonna be checking out Sin and Punishment on the Nintendo 64, baby. Yeah, fuck, I can't do that shit. Actually, that was super embarrassing. Regardless, let's talk about Sin and Punishment. Now, this is it's a Japan exclusive, but it doesn't really matter because this game is all in English. All the voiceovers are in English and the subtitles are in Japanese. So are the menus. However, there's a fix for this. There's a patch that's widely available all over the place where you can fix this game. Fix it. It's not fucking broken. It's just how it is. You can patch the game to pure English. Guys, I want to cut this video right now, but I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna keep going. Let me just try this again. Look, you're not fixing the game. You're just patching it so the entire game speaks the language that you probably speak. That's it. Okay, and then also if you want to be a nasty boy though, there is a pre-patched ROM that you can get, which is what I did, because I'm a nasty boy pirate, and I put it on my EverDrive on my Nintendo 64 and played it that way, or you can emulate it, whatever the fuck you want to do. It doesn't matter. The story makes zero sense. You don't really need it, but it's there if you need it. So this was developed by Treasure with a guest developer Nintendo, and it was released in Japan only in Y2K or the year 2000. Now, I'm gonna take the rest of this shit straight from Wikipedia because I don't know what the fuck is going on. But you take the role of Aaron Orosaki, and this takes place in the near future of the year 2007 when a global famine creates a global war. I'm not really sure what the fuck is going on there, but yeah, I'm very surprised that the technology that's showcased in this game only was like 7 years after this game was released, and it's like pretty advanced. Like, it's...
What I gleaned from my time with the game is that the two main characters of the game, Aaron and Saki, are working alongside another chick whose name I can't remember, but it turns out she's evil and is trying to replace the current Earth with another Earth from another dimension. That's pretty much all I can say about the story, but it's batshit crazy, and it's really fun to watch the cutscenes in between levels because they're batshit crazy.
Hopes, dreams. As long as he wants to be with you, he can accept his humanity.
Stop it! How can we do that?
First, we must put Saki to sleep.
No, we can't do it!
Just fire at Saki's forehead.
Liar! False savior!
Saint Saki.
Shut up!
Do you want Saki to stay this way?
Shut up! Huh?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll stop crying.
Where am I? On a train? A subway?
I might have no idea what's going on, but the cutscenes are House of the Dead or Resident Evil 1 level of B-movie bullshit, and it's great.
You fucking disgust me, Nigel!
The gameplay sees you controlling one of the two characters I just mentioned, depending on the stage, both of which control the exact same way, and it is essentially an on-rails shooter similar to a game like Area 51 or the aforementioned House of the Dead, but minus the light guns. We're going to go into the controls now, and while my description of them might not sound too nuts, in practice while actually playing the game, I repeatedly forgot how to control the game over and over again. They're just incredibly weird, but they do make sense for what this game is trying to do, and with practice you will eventually get used to them. The standard control scheme is this. The analog stick moves your crosshair on screen and you will shoot wherever the crosshair is by pushing the back Z trigger. You can hold it down to rapid fire, or if enemies are close by, you can tap the Z trigger to slice enemies with a sword, and this is insanely powerful compared to your gun. You can also use the slash to parry certain attacks back at the enemy, though unfortunately it isn't always made clear when you can or should be doing this. It's mostly trial and error. You can run from the left to the right using the left and right arrow buttons, or double tap either button to perform a roll in that direction, which will also provide a moment of invulnerability to enemy attacks, much like more recent games such as Elden Ring. Unfortunately, the roll isn't as intuitive as I would like it to be, but since Treasure is more or less a trendsetter here, and using a game mechanic that wouldn't be mainstream for many years after this one released, I'll cut them some slack. But there are so many times when the double press wouldn't perform the roll, and I'd end up taking damage when I shouldn't have. The L and R shoulder buttons will make your character jump, which isn't needed too often, but sometimes there will be objects or enemies you need to hop over, and this is how you do it. Many times in the game I forgot about the jump button entirely because there was just so much shit going on at one time. Finally, the A button on the controller changes your crosshair from either a lock-on mode or a free mode shot. The lock-on mode will instantly stick to enemies you pass over, and you can switch between targets by pressing in their direction on the analog stick. Free fire mode is exactly as it sounds and requires no explanation. While lock-on mode sounds like the way to go, in a lot of cases it isn't, and it can really slow things down when you have a ton of enemies on screen to kill, and really, in those cases, that's when you want to switch to free fire mode. Lock-on is most useful in boss fights or in situations when you only really need to target one enemy, so knowing when to switch between fire modes will be incredibly helpful in the long run to take out enemies as fast as possible. It's also incredibly easy to forget that tapping the Z trigger will slice with your sword. There are many parts in the game where this is required, and it might take a few deaths before you realize that all you needed to do was stop shooting and start slicing fools the fuck up. My final thoughts on the controls: I find myself forgetting I can run left and right, forgetting to jump or slash, or to change between lock-on or free fire mode when things got intense, and this will happen a lot, and that's pretty much one of the only major factors in this game's difficulty. Let's put it this way: controlling this game is like trying to pat your own head and rub your belly at the same time for 2 hours straight, but in this game, when you fuck it up, you die. Aiming with the analog stick while also controlling your character with the arrow keys and jumping with the shoulder buttons feels very complex while doing it, but you do get used to it over time, and I really do feel like this was the best way to set up the controls for this game despite how overwhelming it can be. It does work for the most part, so unlike with Treasure's other game, Alien Soldier, I actually give Treasure a pass on this one. Okay, let's talk about the graphics. I don't really know how I feel about them as they are. There are times when they look like a sludgy mess. If I'm doing my job editing this, I'll hopefully be showing the first stage of the game, and you can see that it's just a blurry mess. There's a gnarly blur filter put over the entire game, and I don't really like it at all. It's like someone at Treasure was like, what would this look like with diarrhea smeared all over it? And then when they saw the result, they were like, that's perfect, leave the diarrhea there. In fact, I didn't like it so much, I actually Googled if there was a way to change this or what I could change in the options on my OSSC, which is what I use to make the games look good on my TV. At least for this review. I've now switched that out with a RetroTink 5X, which I might cover at some point, but I'm getting off topic. Basically though, there's actually an action replay code that removes the blur filter entirely off of many Nintendo 64 games. If you don't know what an action replay is, well, it's a cheat device for older consoles. That's all I'll say about this here. I'm getting way off topic, non-stop here. Anyway, this kind of blew my mind, so I entered in the code on my EverDrive, which is a flash cart with all my games on it, and started the game again, and sure as shit, the blur filter was removed, and in my opinion, the game looks so much better. It's a little buggy sometimes, and there are some graphic anomalies with the code, but for the most part, I think the sharp pixels minus the diarrhea shit looks fucking amazing. Too bad this option wasn't just included in the game for those that prefer sharper pixels to smudgy ones, or in fact an option on every Nintendo 64 game, because a lot of games are guilty of smearing the shit out of their graphics while trying to hide the jagged edges of the polygons. After removing the blur, it was easy to appreciate the graphics in this game, and some stages legit blew me away with what they were doing, as I had never seen the Nintendo 64 come close to anything like what this game pulls off. It's definitely pushing the N64 to its absolute limits as far as I can tell. Let's take a pause here to look at this stage where your hero rides on the top of a jet while circling enemy naval ships and airships.
They're crying! Ha ha! They're crying Brad's name! Armed volunteers are extinct! Get bonus!
It's very impressive stuff, and it's one long uncut sequence basically through the entire stage. From here on out, I'll only be showing clips of the game with the blur filter off because it looks far better. I'll also put the action replay code up on the screen for a few seconds so you can apply it yourself if you're playing this on an emulator or an EverDrive that supports cheats like this. I found online a large compiled list of codes for most games on the N64 too that remove the blur filter, and I'll probably be checking to see if the option is available for any game I play on the N64 going forward. Okay, you nasties, let's talk about the music. It's good here, but it's not incredible. It is mostly guitar driven, but not always. Sometimes it sounds like elevator music, but I don't mind it, but it's also not that exciting to me. We can check out a few snippets of it here, and you can get an idea just how mediocre it is. Yeah, you see that? It's the very definition of just something existing. It's certainly there, and it doesn't affect my life one way or another because of it. It's passable, and that's that. Finally, we're going to be talking about probably the most important aspect of the game, the levels, the enemies, and whether or not it's fun and worth playing. Each level is unique from one another, and some are far more unique than the others. You've got a jungle, a factory, a train, an aerial assault on a naval fleet, which I've shown you a video of, a side-scrolling shoot 'em up, and a battle with the actual planet Earth. Some of these levels is timed. You start with 99 seconds, and it works its way down, as timers generally do, and when it reaches 0, instead of losing automatically, you just take consistent damage to your health until you die, or receive a time bonus by killing a mini-boss, or by collecting a time bonus dropped by enemies. If there was anything about this game aside from the controls that I didn't really love going into it, it was the timer, but it exists and it's not a huge deal for the most part, though in later stages you will find the timer dropping to 0 repeatedly. This is a difficult game and it does not want you to win. The enemies here consist of a generic mix of random soldiers, flying things, guns, turrets. I can't really say there's anything here that's going to completely blow you away, but I would say given the console's limitations, there's just not going to be a lot of variety, and that's to be expected. Mostly just different versions of a bunch of polygons, though there are unique bosses to be fought at the end of each level, but not all of them. The bosses are fun for the most part, but even still, you won't be blown away by their designs. They're sandworms similar to Prehistoric Isle 2, if you remember that playthrough I did. Obviously, I'm gonna plug that one. Some airships, some mechs, a roly-poly with a scorpion tail, some guy legit, his name is Brad, another mech. Really, all of these enemies and bosses are pretty boring designs, but again, I do get it given the console's limitations. Although, weirdly enough, the best battle is when you fight the entire planet Earth for whatever reason. That's pretty genius, and it worked pretty well in this game, so I kind of wish that Treasure was a little bit more inspired with their boss designs, but it doesn't really matter, and it doesn't really detract from the overall enjoyment of the game. No matter what Treasure tried to do with this game, everything is going to look like a mishmash of triangles and straight boring colors. It's just what the N64 does. What's most important here is how fun the enemies and the bosses are to fight, and in that regard the game succeeds. It's fun to fight these bosses and figure out what you're supposed to do, and killing enemies by the thousands in this game is generally a really good time. I mean, genocide has never been so much fun. Ultimately, what's important here is that Treasure made a game I enjoy. They've done it once before and they did it again. This one is really good, and it's odd that it was never properly released in the United States or Europe, since it was already pretty good to go upon release in Japan. The only thing that needed to be done was translate the subtitles over to English, something I swear could have been done in a day with the story that's here and with the English voiceovers that were already in place. The Nintendo 64 needed big hits, and this could have helped out, even though this game came out late in that console's life. This game is frustrating for sure, and difficult to get a handle of, but it's fun, and I suggest if you've got an N64 that you check this one out if you can. It's not the type of game you can just pick up and play. You'll have to learn how it works first, and it'll take some time to perfect it, but once you do, it's pretty rewarding. It's not what you would expect when playing a retro game from the era. It's more intense than that, but it's a worthwhile investment of your time if this is something you're looking to get into.
So yeah, I wrapped this one up pretty quickly. And yeah, do I recommend this game? I absolutely do. If you got a Nintendo 64 or an EverDrive, or if you want to emulate it, go ahead and do it that way. This game is worth playing. It's kind of difficult to get the hang of, but once you do, it's a really fun game. That being said, I'm going to just play some shit here about the Crystal Light Aerobics Challenge. Thanks for watching. Have a great night. Love you. Bye.